Rainbow Six Siege has exploded over the last few years, and it's one of the few modern multiplayer games that has proven that a game can improve immensely over time in terms of quality and popularity. But, like most games of such size, there's probably some things that you guys didn't know. What is up, guys? Jimmy here. Welcome to the Facts Series. The ultimate goal of this series is for you to walk away from this video saying, hey, I actually did not know that. Today, we're going to dive deep into Rainbow Six Siege, the video game. So let's get started. We are running a $200 Amazon gift card giveaway the entire month. All you have to do to enter is like this video, be subscribed, turn on your notifications, and leave a comment why you want to win it with your Twitter handle attached. I will announce the winner at the end of the month on Twitter. First things first, Rainbow Six Siege was released on December 1st of 2015 for the PC, the Xbox One, and the PlayStation 4. Upon release, the game got decent reviews, although the critical reception really wasn't anything special, and it definitely didn't suggest or warrant that the game would become as popular as it did. In fact, it was criticized pretty heavily for a lack of content, significant downgrades from the E3 gameplay, and the abundance of microtransactions in a $60 game that already felt pretty bare bones. Even the sales at launch wasn't anything special, as it was nowhere near Ubisoft's goal of 7 million units. However, it was all of the post-launch content that managed to keep the game alive and thriving. And like I said in the intro, Rainbow Six Siege is one of the few modern multiplayer games that actually has seen hefty growth post-release. So how exactly did Rainbow Six Siege grow? How did it go from not being very popular to one of the most popular shooters on the planet right now? Well, the numbers are actually pretty insane. Despite the lackluster launch and the meh reviews, the game had a consistent player base. And sure, the game didn't sell a ton of copies, but those who did buy it were sticking around for the long haul. Ubisoft was committed to growing the game and keeping it alive post-release, and in the summer of 2016 is when Siege hit the big time, as the release of the Skull Rain DLC managed to bump the player base up in a whopping 40%, pushing it past 10 million players. Just a year later, in mid-2017, Ubisoft announced that Siege had passed 20 million registered players and that they had an average daily player count of over 2.3 million. Then, on Siege's 2-year birthday, the developing studio announced that they passed 25 million registered users, proving that the game was not going anywhere. Despite the insane success that Siege has seen over its life so far, did you guys know that it almost didn't exist at all and the development was relatively rushed? Originally, the game started out as a completely different project called Rainbow Six Patriots, which was going to be far more focused on the narrative and the storytelling other than multiplayer. The story was set in New York City as a terrorist organization called the True Patriots come to power as they attempt to correct the corruption of Wall Street in violent manners. You played as Team Rainbow, who was called in to put a stop to them, but you were led by a named James Wolfe, who had a complete disregard for ethics during their operation and was willing to do whatever it took to get the job done, creating this moral gray area for a player to try and figure out who the real villain was. Hype was pretty high for the game, and it was even featured on the cover of Game Informer in December of 2011. I remember this. However, after experiencing issues with the transition from the 7th console generation to the 8th, Ubisoft decided to cancel the game altogether instead of trying to transfer all the work they had done to a new hardware. Patriots was officially canceled on my birthday, June 9, 2014, and the future of the Rainbow Six license was unknown at that time, and I wish we would get Patriots. I really do. It looked like a really cool game. So, following the cancellation of Patriots, Ubisoft took 25 people from that development team and gave them time to come up with new ideas to not only replace the canceled title, but also to reboot the Rainbow Six franchise as a whole. They wanted to bring in new players and keep things fresh while still maintaining the spirit of the series. Now, eventually, they came up with the idea of a small-scale multiplayer game focused on intense face-offs between the terrorists and the counter-terrorists in high-stake environments with a heavy emphasis on replayability. Ubisoft approved the idea and granted them a team of 150 people to work on this new game. There was originally going to be a single-player campaign, but those plans were quickly scrapped so the team could go all in on the multiplayer components of the game. Originally, Rainbow Six Siege wasn't going to be called Rainbow Six Siege. It was going to be called Rainbow Six Unbreakable. And that was for a few different reasons, the most obvious of them being the theme of the game, which involved a small team of fighters overcoming seemingly impossible odds and circumstances. But the other main contributing factor to the Unbreakable title was the development team's morale. There was a lot of concern about the future of the title, given the fact that Patriots had been stuck in development for a long time, and now they had to come up with a game from scratch that not only lived up to the hype of Patriots, but also rebooted the series as a whole. That is no small task. And according to Ubisoft, the team was very nervous for the game's reveal, as they felt that the changes they made were going to upset the longtime fans. But their morale overall was very strong and unbreakable, hence the title, right? It didn't stay that way. It sounds better with Rainbow Six Siege, but that's the story behind it. Did you guys know that Rainbow Six Siege was originally going to have respawns? Part of the game's core mechanics involve conserving your life and making sure that your teammates conserve theirs as well before you don't want to get killed. That's it. It's over. However, Ubisoft reportedly was not going to have this one-and-done gameplay mechanic at first. According to them, the game originally played out the same way as it does now, except with respawns. However, as a way of testing the game, the team would often host mini-tournaments in the studio, and they noticed that it was always the same people winning them. This led to them removing the respawns from the game, as they thought that they benefited individual players and not the team overall, and this conflicted with their goal of creating a super team-based game. They also originally worried that removing the spawns would result in the game not being successful with casual players, but these worries were quickly put to rest when they noticed how well the game actually worked without the respawn system, as it actually rewarded the experienced players for being leaders while also rewarding newer players for taking their time and strategizing, which helped them get better with the game's immense learning curve. So I want to know in the comment section, do you think Rainbow Six Siege could sport respawns? RSS was developed using an engine called Real Blast Destruction, which is a modified version of the Anvil Next 2.0 engine. It was specifically designed to be as destructible as possible. The original version of the Anvil engine dates all the way back to 2007, when the original Assassin's Creed was actually developed using the Scimitar engine, which was later upgraded to the very first Anvil engine, which led to the Anvi Next engine, and then finally the Anvil Next 2.0. Believe it or not, the first game developed on this 2.0 engine was the disastrous Assassin's Creed Unity, which featured countless game-breaking bugs and glitches, and ultimately leading to a hiatus for the Assassin's Creed franchise. Now, in an order to improve, or an effort to improve the engine and make it more compatible with Siege, the dev team modified it to make the Real Blast Destruction engine, which would procedurally break everything down and remodel the environment, the way to go. This made the game extremely destructible and encouraged new experimental playstyles, which is a big draw in Rainbow Six Siege. Now, respawns weren't the only mechanic cut from the final game. According to Ubisoft employees, Siege was originally going to have AI-controlled teammates for single-player missions, just as the previous Rainbow Six games had, but the team later decided to cut the AI teammates from the game in an effort to encourage actual team play and not just relying on the game itself to help you. Siege was also originally going to have hit markers like many other shooters do, but this feature was removed for some pretty interesting reasons. According to the developers, hit markers ended up being a cheap mechanic, as you could just spray through walls and instantly learn where enemies were. Since they wanted their game to be more dependent on strategy and coordination, they removed hit markers altogether to actually prevent people from exploiting the ability to shoot through the walls. Now, many Siege players have been asking Ubisoft for a map editor, and after all, it would be an amazing thing to have a game like Siege, and you could create tons of new ways to play, tons of replayability factors to an already extremely popular game. Despite the fact that Ubisoft hasn't said anything about a map editor being added to the game, there were actually original plans for one included from the very beginning. According to developers, the earliest concept of the game contained a map editor, although there was never actually any work done to make it happen, as they needed to focus on other aspects of development, which eventually led to the idea being forgotten altogether. Many fans have also pointed out that Ubisoft added a map editor to Far Cry 4, meaning that they are open to the idea of letting fans create their own experience, but there is still no official word on whether or not it will be added to Siege. So, would you like to see a map editor added to Siege? And finally, the game's operators are one of the main pulls and draws for new players, as it helps add the replayability factor when you can experiment with different abilities. But did you guys know that all the operators in Siege are actually based on real counter-terrorism units? All of the characters are obviously fictional and created by the developers, but the units themselves and their gear are all based on real counter-terrorists utilized by the American SWAT, the French GIGN, the British SAS, and the Russian Spetsnaz, and also the German GSG-9. Like most based on real-world things in media, obviously some artistic liberties have been taken for the sake of gameplay, but it's still pretty cool to look into the real-world units and compare them to their video game counterparts, especially with the personalities of the operators themselves. So I want to know from you guys, who is your favorite operator on defense and offense in Rainbow Six Siege? And there you have 10 hopefully interesting facts that you guys found informative about the ever so popular shooter, Rainbow Six Siege. There's a playlist below if you guys want to check out all the other facts videos. We can do facts on anything. Video games, people, place, products, space, aliens, doesn't matter. Whatever you guys want to see, we'll make it happen. We'll dig a little deeper and hopefully inform you guys on something you didn't know. Hope you guys have a great day. Drop a like on the way out, and I'll see you tomorrow night for a new one.